Your mind is racing toward a destination it will never reach, burning the fuel of your very life in pursuit of mirages that dissolve the moment you approach them. How many thoughts raced through your mind in the last 60 seconds? Count them. 10, 20, 50. Most of you cannot even count them because they move too fast for consciousness to track. Your mental engine runs at maximum speed while you sit perfectly still, consuming enormous amounts of life energy to arrive nowhere. This is not intelligence. This is not productivity. This is mental tyranny. You believe that faster thinking equals better results. You have been conditioned to equate mental speed with mental power. But observe what actually happens when your thoughts accelerate beyond your ability to direct them. Decisions become reactions. Clarity becomes confusion. Peace becomes anxiety. The very tool designed to serve your highest good becomes the master that enslaves you. I met a man who ran one of the largest corporations in his city. From the outside, his life appeared to be the picture of success. Corner office on the 40th floor. 7-figure income. Respect from his peers. Yet when I spoke with him privately, his hands trembled slightly as he described his daily experience. I cannot turn my mind off, he said. From the moment I wake up until late at night, thoughts crash into each other like traffic in a storm. I make millions of dollars in decisions, but I cannot decide what to eat for lunch without 20 minutes of internal debate. This man had fallen into the speed trap. He believed that thinking faster about more things would give him better control over his circumstances. Instead, his circumstances began controlling him. His thoughts moved so quickly that he lost the ability to distinguish between important and trivial matters. Everything became urgent. Everything demanded immediate mental attention. His mind had become like a radio scanning stations, picking up fragments of information, but never settling long enough to receive a clear signal. Where did he learn this pattern? The same place you learned it. From a world that rewards mental reactivity and calls it intelligence. From systems that measure your worth by how quickly you respond rather than how wisely you respond. From the false belief that a busy mind is a productive mind. But productivity and busyness are not the same thing. A farmer who plants seeds frantically in every direction may appear more active than one who carefully prepares the soil, selects the right location, and plants with deliberate precision. Yet which farmer will harvest more abundance? Speed without direction is not progress, it is waste. Your mental energy operates according to the same principle. When you scatter your thoughts in every direction, you may feel productive, but you produce very little of value. When you focus your mental energy with deliberate precision, you can accomplish in 1 hour what previously took you an entire day. The cost of mental acceleration extends far beyond lost productivity. It steals something far more precious than time. It steals your ability to experience the richness of life itself. Consider what happens when you eat a meal while your mind races through tomorrow's schedule. You taste nothing. You enjoy nothing. You nourish your body while starving your soul. The food becomes fuel, not pleasure. The moment becomes a mere transition to the next moment. Life becomes a series of rushed experiences rather than meaningful encounters. This same pattern repeats in every area of your existence. Conversations become information exchanges rather than human connections. Beautiful scenery becomes background noise to your internal dialogue. Even moments of rest become planning sessions for future activities. You live your entire life in mental fast forward, missing the very experiences you work so hard to create. The tragedy is not just what you miss, it is what you create through this mental acceleration. Rapid thinking generates rapid emotions. Rapid emotions generate rapid decisions. Rapid decisions generate rapid consequences. Before you know it, your entire life moves at a pace that feels completely beyond your control. You find yourself constantly catching up to yourself. Your mind makes commitments that your body must fulfill. Your thoughts create expectations that your reality cannot meet. Your mental speed produces a momentum that carries you past the very destinations you intended to reach. This creates a vicious cycle. The faster your thoughts move, the more chaotic your life becomes. The more chaotic your life becomes, the faster your thoughts move in an attempt to manage the chaos. You try to think your way out of problems that thinking created in the first place. Life operates in predictable patterns, and one of the most predictable patterns is this: external chaos always reflects internal turbulence. When your thoughts move at maximum speed, your circumstances mirror that velocity. Deadlines multiply. Crises emerge from nowhere. Simple situations become complicated. Complicated situations become overwhelming. You may think these external pressures cause your mental acceleration, but the reverse is true. Your mental acceleration creates the very circumstances that then demand rapid thinking. You become trapped in a prison of your own mental making. Watch a person person whose thoughts race constantly. They create emergencies where none existed. They turn simple conversations into complex negotiations. They transform minor inconveniences into major disruptions. Their rapid thinking does not solve problems, it multiplies them. Yet this same person, when guided to slow their mental velocity, discovers something remarkable. The same circumstances that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. The same challenges that once required frantic thinking begin to reveal simple solutions. The same relationships that once felt stressful begin to provide genuine satisfaction. The difference is not in the external conditions. The difference is in the internal rhythm. But recognizing this pattern requires you to observe your own mental velocity with honest awareness. Most people never truly observe their thinking patterns because their thoughts move too quickly for observation. They live inside their mental storm without ever stepping back far enough to see its structure. Start with this simple experiment. For the next 2 minutes, count how many different subjects your mind touches. Not the specific thoughts, just the subjects. Work, family, health, money, past events, future plans, random memories. Each time your attention shifts to a new topic, make a mental note. Do not try to control the process, simply observe. Most people discover that their minds change subjects every few seconds. Some topics receive barely a moment's attention before the mental spotlight moves elsewhere. This constant shifting creates the illusion of mental productivity while destroying the possibility of mental depth. Your thoughts have become like a person who visits 20 houses in one afternoon but never stays long enough to have a meaningful conversation with anyone. You touch many subjects but penetrate none of them. You think about everything but understand very little. This mental pattern reflects a deeper truth about how modern minds have been trained. You have been taught to consume information rapidly rather than digest it thoroughly. You have learned to respond immediately rather than reflect carefully. You have developed the habit of mental grazing rather than mental nourishment. Society rewards this pattern because it creates productive workers and enthusiastic consumers, but it destroys contemplative thinkers and wise decision makers. It produces people who can multitask efficiently but cannot concentrate deeply, people who can process large amounts of information but cannot extract meaningful insights from it. The false promise of mental speed is that it will give you an advantage over others who think more slowly. You believe that rapid thinking makes you more intelligent, more capable, more successful. This belief keeps you trapped in patterns that actually diminish your intelligence, capability, and success. True intelligence is not the speed at which you process information, it is the depth at which you understand it. True capability is not how many things you can think about simultaneously, it is how effectively you can focus on what matters most. True success is not how quickly you can make decisions, it is how consistently you can make good decisions. When you slow your mental velocity, you gain access to forms of intelligence that rapid thinking cannot reach. Intuitive insights emerge only in mental stillness. Creative solutions appear only when the mind stops searching frantically for answers. Wise perspectives develop only when thoughts have time to mature and ripen. The executive I mentioned earlier learned this truth through necessity rather than choice. A health crisis forced him to spend several weeks in complete rest. During this time, he could not maintain his usual mental pace. Initially, this felt like torture. His mind fought against the forced slowdown like a caged animal, but after several days, something unexpected happened. Solutions to problems that had plagued him for months began appearing effortlessly. Decisions that had seemed impossible became obviously clear. Relationships that had felt strained began to heal naturally. All of this occurred not through increased mental effort, but through decreased mental speed. When he returned to work, he maintained some of the mental disciplines he had developed during his recovery. He started each day with 10 minutes of conscious breathing rather than immediate task planning. He created gaps of silence between meetings rather than rushing from one to the next. He practiced single-pointed attention rather than scattered multitasking. The results transformed not only his personal experience but his professional effectiveness. He made better decisions in less time. He communicated more clearly with fewer words. He solved problems with solutions that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. His company's performance improved significantly, not because he worked harder but because he worked from a place of mental clarity rather than mental chaos. This transformation is available to anyone willing to question the assumption that faster thinking produces better results, but it requires you to abandon the mental habits that feel productive while destroying your actual productivity. It requires you to give up the illusion of mental control that comes through mental acceleration. Your thoughts have their own natural rhythm, just as your heartbeat and breathing have natural rhythms. When you force your thoughts to move faster than their optimal pace, you create the same kind of stress that occurs when you force your heart to beat faster than necessary. The system works, but it works inefficiently and unsustainably. Mental deceleration is not about thinking slowly or becoming mentally lazy. It is about discovering the optimal velocity for your thoughts, the speed at which they move most efficiently and effectively. This optimal speed is almost always much slower than your current mental pace. The solution to mental chaos is not found in thinking better thoughts faster, but in discovering the profound intelligence that emerges when thoughts slow to the rhythm of wisdom. This wisdom operates at frequencies that cannot be detected by the frantically moving mind, but reveal themselves clearly to consciousness that has learned to be still within activity and quiet within engagement. What happens inside your brain when thoughts slow down? Not what you think happens, but what actually occurs at the neurological level. Scientists have measured the brain activity of people in states of mental stillness compared to those in states of mental acceleration. The results reveal something that contradicts everything you have been taught about thinking and intelligence. When mental activity decreases, cognitive function increases. When thoughts slow down, problem-solving ability improves. When the mind becomes still, intelligence becomes more acute. This is not mystical theory. This is measurable science. Your brain operates like a sophisticated orchestra. When every instrument plays at maximum volume simultaneously, you hear only noise. But when each instrument plays at its optimal level with proper timing and spacing, you hear music. Mental stillness is not the absence of thought, it is the proper orchestration of thinking. Consider how a master builder constructs a foundation. He does not rush to pour concrete as quickly as possible. He carefully prepares the ground, ensures proper alignment, and allows each layer to set before adding the next. This patience creates a foundation that can support enormous weight for decades or even centuries. Your thoughts require the same patient foundation building approach. Rapid thinking is like pouring concrete before the ground is prepared. It creates structures that appear solid but collapse under pressure. Deliberate thinking creates mental frameworks that become stronger over time and can support increasingly sophisticated ideas and decisions. The difference lies in understanding how intelligence actually develops versus how you think it develops. You have been taught that intelligence is the rapid processing of information, but true intelligence is the ability to extract wisdom from experience. Wisdom cannot be rushed. It emerges only when the mind has sufficient stillness to recognize patterns, connections, and principles that exist beneath the surface of obvious information. When you plant a seed in your garden, what determines whether it grows into a healthy plant? Not how often you dig it up to check its progress, not how much water you pour on it in a single day, not how loudly you encourage it to grow faster. Growth occurs through consistent conditions that allow natural processes to unfold at their optimal pace. Your mental development follows the same organic principles. Small daily practices that slow your mental velocity create conditions where insight, creativity, and wisdom can naturally emerge. Forced thinking produces forced results. Organic thinking produces sustainable transformation. But this requires you to trust a process that feels counterintuitive in a world obsessed with speed and immediate results. You must learn to value the quality of your thinking more than the quantity of your thoughts. You must develop faith in your mind's natural intelligence rather than trying to force it to perform beyond its optimal capacity. Watch what happens when you give your mind permission to move at its natural pace. Instead of jumping immediately to conclusions, you find yourself considering perspectives you had never noticed. Instead of reacting automatically to situations, you discover response options that were invisible when your thoughts moved too quickly. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by complex problems, you begin to see simple solutions that were hidden by mental complexity. This shift occurs because mental stillness allows you to access different levels of intelligence. When your thoughts race, you can only use the surface level of your mental capacity, the part that processes immediate information and generates quick responses. But when your thoughts slow down, you gain access to what could be called your intuitive intelligence, the part that recognizes patterns, synthesizes information, and generates insights that seem to come from nowhere but actually emerge from the deeper levels of mental processing. How many times have you struggled with a problem for hours, thinking frantically about solutions only to have the perfect answer appear effortlessly when you stopped trying so hard? This is not coincidence. This is your natural intelligence operating at its optimal frequency. Your intuitive intelligence operates like a radio receiver that can only pick up signals when there is minimal interference. Mental acceleration creates static that blocks these signals. Mental stillness clears the interference and allows you to receive information that was always available but previously undetectable. But accessing this level of intelligence requires you to understand the power of mental gaps, the spaces between thoughts where true intelligence resides. Think about music for a moment. What makes a beautiful melody? Not just the notes but the spaces between the notes. Without these spaces, music becomes noise. The silence between sounds is as important as the sounds themselves. Your thinking operates according to the same principle. The space between your thoughts is not empty. It is full of potential insights, potential solutions, potential wisdom. But this potential can only manifest when you stop filling every mental moment with thinking activity.
Most people are so afraid of mental silence that they immediately fill any gap with more thoughts, more analysis, more mental activity. This fear of mental gaps keeps you trapped in surface-level thinking. You become like a person who talks constantly because they are afraid of what they might hear in the silence, but the silence contains exactly what you need to hear. Creating conscious gaps in your thinking throughout the day is like opening windows in a stuffy room. Fresh insights can enter, stale mental patterns can be released, your mind can breathe, and with that breathing comes renewed clarity and energy. Start with something simple. When someone asks you a question, instead of immediately responding, take 3 conscious breaths. Use those breaths to create a gap between the question and your answer. Notice what happens in that gap. Often a much better response emerges than what you would have said automatically.
This same principle applies to decision making. Instead of making choices based on your first mental reaction, create a gap. Allow the decision to rest in your awareness without immediately trying to solve it. Very often, the right choice becomes obvious without any mental effort, but creating these gaps requires you to overcome years of conditioning that equates mental activity with mental productivity. You have been trained to feel guilty when your mind is not busy, to feel lazy when you are not thinking about something, to feel anxious when there is silence in your mental space. This conditioning keeps you addicted to mental acceleration even when it produces poor results. You continue thinking rapidly, not because it works, but because stopping feels uncomfortable. You have become a mental workaholic who cannot stop thinking even when thinking becomes counterproductive. Breaking this addiction requires the same principles that overcome any harmful habit. You must recognize the pattern, understand its consequences, and consistently practice alternative behaviors until they become natural. The pattern is mental acceleration in response to any challenge, problem, or uncertainty. The consequence is decreased effectiveness and increased stress. The alternative behavior is conscious mental deceleration through specific techniques that calm your thinking without making you mentally passive. One powerful technique is conscious breathing that synchronizes with your thought process. Your breath and your thoughts are intimately connected. When you breathe rapidly and shallowly, your thoughts automatically accelerate. When you breathe slowly and fully, your thoughts naturally slow down. But this is not about controlling your breath to control your thoughts. This is about allowing your breath to teach your mind its natural rhythm. Your body already knows how to function optimally. Your mind can learn from your body's wisdom. Another technique is single-pointed attention. Instead of allowing your mind to think about multiple subjects simultaneously, gently guide it to focus on one thing at a time. This is not forced concentration that creates mental tension. This is relaxed focus that allows your full intelligence to engage with whatever you are considering. When you give your complete attention to one subject, you often discover that it requires much less mental effort to understand it thoroughly than it does to think about it partially. While your attention is scattered among many subjects, these techniques begin to recalibrate your mental operating system from the default setting of rapid thinking to the optimal setting of deliberate thinking. This recalibration does not happen overnight, but it happens faster than you might expect when you practice consistently. Your mind is remarkably adaptable. Just as it learned to operate at high speed, it can learn to operate at optimal speed. The key is consistent practice that gradually shifts your mental default settings. Think of this process like tuning a musical instrument. When an instrument is out of tune, every note sounds slightly wrong even if the musician plays perfectly. But when the instrument is properly tuned, even simple melodies sound beautiful. Your mind works the same way. When your mental velocity is properly calibrated, even ordinary thinking produces extraordinary results. The science of mental stillness reveals that your brain functions most effectively when it operates within specific parameters of mental activity. Too little mental activity produces mental dullness. Too much mental activity produces mental chaos. But the right amount of mental activity, moving at the right pace, produces mental clarity that can transform every aspect of your life. This optimal mental velocity is not the same for everyone, but everyone can learn to recognize their own optimal pace through careful observation and gentle experimentation. You can discover the speed at which your thoughts move most efficiently, most creatively, and most wisely. Once you understand your optimal mental velocity, you can begin implementing the daily disciplines that will establish and maintain this pace consistently. These disciplines are not complex or time-consuming, but they are specific and they must be practiced regularly to create lasting change in your mental operating patterns. Knowledge of mental stillness means nothing without the daily discipline to embody it, and this discipline begins with your very next breath.
What you do in the first 30 minutes after awakening determines the mental rhythm for your entire day. Most people surrender this critical time to mental reactivity. They reach for their phone before their feet touch the floor. They flood their consciousness with information before their mind has fully awakened. They start their day by responding to other people's priorities instead of establishing their own mental center. This is like starting a race by running in the wrong direction. No matter how fast you run after that, you must first stop, turn around, and regain your proper orientation. By then, enormous energy has been wasted, and valuable time has been lost. Instead, use the first 30 minutes as calibration time for your mental velocity. Your mind is naturally quieter upon awakening. Your thoughts move more slowly, and with less interference. This is not grogginess, this is your natural mental state before it becomes accelerated by external stimulation. Begin with 5 minutes of conscious breathing while still in bed. Not deep breathing or controlled breathing, simply aware breathing. Notice the natural rhythm of your breath without trying to change it. This practice establishes a baseline of mental stillness that will serve as your reference point throughout the day.
When your mind starts generating its usual morning thoughts about schedules, problems, or tasks, gently acknowledge them without engaging. Think of these thoughts as clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. You can see them, but you do not need to chase them or push them away. They will pass naturally if you do not feed them with attention. After the breathing practice, spend another 5 minutes setting your mental intention for the day. Not your task list or your schedule. Your mental intention. How do you want your mind to operate today? At what speed do you want your thoughts to move? What quality of awareness do you want to maintain? This intention setting is not goal making. Goals are future focused and create mental tension. Intentions are present focused and create mental clarity. When you set a clear intention for how you want your mind to function, you create an internal compass that will guide your mental choices throughout the day. Then, before you engage with any external information, spend 10 minutes on one activity that brings you genuine satisfaction. This might be reading something inspiring, looking out the window at nature, gentle stretching, or simply sitting quietly. The specific activity matters less than the principle. Feed your mind something nourishing before exposing it to the mental fast food that fills most modern days. This morning practice creates what you could call a mental immune system. Just as physical immune systems protect against harmful substances, a properly calibrated mental state protects against harmful thinking patterns. When your day begins with intentional stillness, it becomes much easier to maintain optimal mental velocity as challenges arise. But morning calibration alone is not sufficient. You need anchoring practices throughout the day that return you to optimal mental velocity whenever you notice yourself accelerating beyond the point of effectiveness. The most powerful anchoring practice is what you might call the breath reset. Whenever you notice your thoughts racing, take 3 conscious breaths. Not 3 deep breaths, 3 conscious breaths. The consciousness is more important than the depth. During each breath, release any mental tension you have accumulated. With each exhale, return to your natural mental rhythm. This practice takes less than 30 seconds and can be done anywhere, anytime without anyone noticing. But it requires developing the awareness to recognize when your mental velocity has exceeded optimal levels. Most people are so accustomed to mental acceleration that they no longer notice when it happens. Start paying attention to the physical sensations that accompany mental racing. Tightness in your jaw or shoulders. Shallow breathing. A feeling of internal urgency even when nothing truly urgent is happening. These physical signals are more reliable than mental ones because your body always reflects your mental state accurately. Use daily activities as opportunities for mental training rather than mental acceleration. When you eat, eat with full awareness rather than planning your next activity. When you walk, walk with attention to the physical sensation rather than mental rehearsal of future conversations. When you listen to someone speak, listen completely rather than preparing your response while they talk. These simple practices transform ordinary moments into opportunities for maintaining optimal mental velocity. Instead of allowing daily life to speed up your thinking, you use daily life to practice mental discipline. Another powerful anchoring technique is the transition pause. Between every major activity during your day, create a conscious pause. When you finish one task and before you begin the next, stop for 15 seconds. Breathe consciously. Release any mental residue from the previous activity. Set your intention for the next activity. This prevents mental momentum from building to unmanageable levels. Most mental acceleration occurs because people move from one activity to the next without clearing the mental energy of the previous activity. This creates mental accumulation throughout the day until the mind feels overwhelmed and chaotic.
Transition pauses prevent this accumulation by creating regular opportunities for mental release and renewal. But even with consistent anchoring practices, you need evening integration to process and release the mental accumulation that naturally occurs during active periods. Evening practices are as important as morning practices, but they serve a different function. Morning practices establish optimal mental velocity. Evening practices restore and renew it. Spend the hour before sleep in progressively quieter activities. Avoid intense conversations, stimulating entertainment, or complex problem solving during this time. Instead, engage in activities that naturally slow your mental velocity. Gentle reading, quiet music, simple organizing tasks, or contemplative practices. 20 minutes before sleep, practice mental digestion. Review your day not with analysis or judgment, but with gentle awareness. What went well? What was challenging? What did you learn about your own mental patterns? This review should be more like watching a movie of your day rather than editing or critiquing it. Then spend 10 minutes in conscious gratitude. Not forced gratitude for things you think you should appreciate, but genuine recognition of what actually brought you satisfaction or growth during the day. This practice completes the mental processing of daily experiences and prepares your mind for restorative sleep. Quality sleep is itself a form of mental discipline. Your brain processes and integrates the day's experiences during sleep. When you go to bed with a calm mind, this processing occurs efficiently and you wake with greater mental clarity. When you go to bed with an agitated mind, the processing is chaotic and you wake feeling mentally foggy even if you slept for adequate hours.
These daily practices, morning calibration, throughout the day anchoring, and evening integration, create a sustainable rhythm that gradually resets your default mental velocity. But lasting transformation requires understanding that this is not a quick fix or temporary adjustment. This is a fundamental change in how you operate your mind. After several weeks of consistent practice, you will notice that maintaining optimal mental velocity requires less conscious effort. Your mind will begin defaulting to this slower, more effective pace rather than defaulting to rapid thinking. Situations that once triggered mental acceleration will be met with natural mental stillness. You will find that you make better decisions with less mental effort. Problems that once seemed complex will reveal simple solutions. Relationships that once felt stressful will become sources of genuine connection. Work that once felt overwhelming will become manageable and even enjoyable. This transformation occurs not because your external circumstances change, but because your internal relationship to circumstances changes. When your mind operates at optimal velocity, you have access to resources of intelligence, creativity, and wisdom that are impossible to reach when thoughts race beyond your control. But perhaps the most significant change will be in your relationship to time itself. When your mind slows down, time seems to expand. You stop feeling constantly behind schedule or overwhelmed by your daily responsibilities. Instead of racing through life, you begin living it with presence and awareness. Remember the truth that began this conversation: your mind has been racing toward destinations it will never reach. Mental acceleration creates the illusion of progress while actually preventing you from arriving anywhere meaningful. Mental discipline creates real progress by allowing you to move toward your goals with intention, clarity, and sustainable pace. The choice is always before you. In every moment, will you allow your thoughts to race beyond your control, or will you maintain the mental discipline to operate at optimal velocity? This choice determines not only what you accomplish, but how you experience the process of accomplishment. The practices I have described are not complex, but they are specific. They are not time-consuming, but they must be consistent. They are not difficult to understand, but they require patience to master. Most importantly, they are not theoretical concepts. They are practical tools that will transform your daily experience when applied regularly. Your mind is the most powerful tool you possess. Like any powerful tool, it produces the best results when operated skillfully rather than carelessly. Mental discipline is simply the skillful operation of your own consciousness. Begin today. Begin with your next breath. Begin with the choice to notice your current mental velocity and gently guide it toward the pace that serves your highest good. Begin with the understanding that every moment offers a new opportunity to practice mental mastery. The race your mind has been running has no finish line because it has no real destination, but the practice of mental discipline has both a clear direction and achievable daily goals. Stop racing toward mirages. Start walking with purpose toward the life that becomes possible when your mind operates in service of your wisdom rather than in rebellion against your peace.